Welcome to the Golden Gems podcast. Today we're taking a deep dive into William Binney, the mathematician who built the NSA's modern brain only to see it weaponized against the very people it was meant to protect.
Right. And it is a story that fundamentally rewrites the narrative of the last 20 years of American intelligence. I mean, we usually think of the surveillance state as this, inevitable result of 9/11.
That we were attacked, so we had to trade privacy for security.
Exactly. But the reality of William Binney's life really suggests that was a false choice from day one.
That's the part that really unnerves me about this case.
Yeah.
It's not just a typical spy story. It's a story about this deep internal pathology.
Yeah.
We aren't looking at a failure of technology here, or even a failure of intelligence gathering. We're looking at a failure of bureaucracy, a specific moment where the NSA had to choose between being effective or being expensive.
And they chose expensive?
Every single time.
Internal pathology is really the perfect phrase for it. To understand why a 64-year-old math genius ends up with a gun in his face in his own shower, you have to understand that the villain in this story isn't some foreign state. It's the military-industrial complex's immune response to efficiency.
So let's back up and introduce the man at the center of this.
Yeah.
William Binney.
Yeah.
He doesn't fit the central casting mold of a spy at all.
No, not all.
He's not jumping off bridges in Berlin in a trench coat. He's described much more like a university dean or a forgotten academic.
He's a savant, born in September 1943, right in the middle of the war in Reynoldsville, Pennsylvania. And before we even get into his career, I think we have to talk about his genealogical foundations.
Right, the family history.
Exactly, because his absolute uncompromising stance on the Constitution later in life, it doesn't just come out of thin air. His ancestry traces deep back into the Reconstruction era. He was raised in this environment of rigid Pennsylvania stoicism.
Where the founding documents aren't just political theory.
They are the bedrock. There is this deeply embedded generational reverence for the actual text of the Constitution. And you see that play out perfectly when his career actually starts during the Vietnam era.
Right, it's 1970. He graduates from Penn State with a degree in mathematics.
And the draft is in full swing. Binney knows he's highly likely to get picked up.
And instead of dodging it or just, waiting to be called, he calculates the probability.
Because he's a mathematician.
Exactly. He realizes that if he waits to be drafted, he's going to be infantry. He's going to be a body in the jungle. But if he volunteers, he can dictate the terms of his service. He volunteers specifically to ensure they use his brain, not his physical body.
Which lands him in the Army Security Agency and eventually the NSA. And he gets assigned to the Russia desk. Now, we need to be really clear about what he was actually doing there because it wasn't just reading intercepted letters.
No, he was a traffic analyst.
Yeah, right. And this is a concept that I think gets lost in modern discussions about surveillance. We assume spying means listening to the actual audio of phone calls. But Binney was doing something much more mathematical. He was looking at rhythmic shifts.
Rhythmic shifts.
Yeah, think of it like a biological organism. The Soviet Union was a massive, sprawling bureaucracy. It had a pulse. Binney figured out that he didn't need to decode the encrypted content of a message to know what was happening. If he saw a command center in Moscow suddenly start pinging a supply depot in Vladivostok at 3:00 a.m.
And the volume of traffic spikes by 400% against the baseline?
He knows troops are moving. Exactly. He knows a maneuver is imminent before they even execute it.
He was predicting the future by analyzing the metadata of bureaucracy.
He was mapping the who talks to whom and when, and he was incredibly good at it. For decades, this was the absolute gold standard of signals intelligence. But then, the world broke.
The wall comes down. The Soviet Union dissolves into a dozen different republics.
Yeah.
The single monolithic enemy is just gone.
And almost simultaneously, the technological landscape shifts completely underneath their feet.
We move from radio waves to fiber optics. The internet happens.
This is the crisis point. By the late 90s, the NSA is essentially going deaf. They were set up to drink from a garden hose, and suddenly the internet turned on a fire hose. The volume of data wasn't just doubling, it was exponential.
They couldn't just record it anymore. There was way too much.
And the agency was panicking. They were missing crucial intelligence because they were drowning in noise. This is where Binney retreats to the SARC.
The SIGINT Automation Research Center.
Right. SIGINT standing for Signals Intelligence. The SARC was basically a skunkworks project, a small group of brilliant weirdos, including Binney, Ed Loomis, and Kirk Wiebe, hiding in a corner of the agency trying to solve the impossible problem of the digital age.
And Binney's solution was deeply philosophical.
It was. He argued that you simply cannot collect everything. It's physically impossible. You have to filter it.
You have to find the needle before you put it in the haystack.
Precisely. You have to understand the shape of the internet. And this leads directly to the creation of ThinThread.
Let's really dig into ThinThread because this is the pivotal technology in our story. This was Binney's masterpiece.
It was a program designed to scan the massive flow of data on the fiber optic lines and identify patterns of interest in real time.
Let's break down the graph concept here, because ThinThread wasn't listening to individual calls. It was building a social graph.
Right. Imagine a web. If a known bad actor in Yemen calls a burner phone in San Diego, that creates a link. If that burner phone then calls a chemical supply company in New Jersey, that creates another link. The software identifies that specific chain of connections as a threat signature.
The pattern itself is the alert.
Yes, it doesn't care about the millions of regular people calling their grandmothers. It cares about the shape of the network.
And the most important part, the part that elevates this to constitutional tragedy, is the privacy design. Binney knew that scanning these fiber optic lines inherently meant sweeping up American data.
And this goes back to his roots, right? He was a constitutionalist. He believed strictly in the Fourth Amendment. So he hard-coded a privacy protection directly into the software of ThinThread. If the system swept up data from a U.S. citizen, a U.S. Social Security number, a phone number, an IP address, it was instantly encrypted.
It was scrambled. No human analyst could look at it.
Correct, unless they had a warrant. If the pattern indicated a legitimate, verifiable threat, you took that mathematical evidence to a judge, got a warrant, and only then would the system give you the key to decrypt that specific identity.
It was a perfect balance. It gave the NSA the speed and scope they desperately needed, but it kept them strictly within the bounds of the law.
And the price tag?
Tell me.
Roughly $3.2 million.
In defense contracting terms, that is a rounding error.
It's nothing. It was cheap, it was finished, and it worked flawlessly.
So in a rational world, the NSA adopts this, we prevent 9/11, and we maintain our civil liberties.
But we don't live in a rational world. We live in a bureaucratic one. Enter the Iron Triangle.
The nexus between the government agency, the private contractors, and the congressional budget committees.
You have to understand the perverse incentives at play here. If you are a high-ranking NSA official, your power, your prestige, is determined by the size of your budget and the number of people working under you.
Right. So if you solve the agency's biggest existential problem with a $3 million software script run by 3 guys in a basement, you don't get a bigger budget next year.
You get a smaller one. Efficiency is a literal threat to the empire. So the NSA leadership, specifically General Michael Hayden at the time, was pushing a completely different project called Trailblazer.
And Trailblazer was the exact opposite of ThinThread.
It was a massive, sprawling initiative contracted out to the big defense firms. We're talking SAI, Boeing, Booz, Allen Hamilton.
And the price tag on Trailblazer wasn't $3 million.
It was billions. Billions of dollars. And it didn't even work. It was essentially vaporware.
But it was lucrative vaporware.
Highly lucrative. It allowed the agency to shovel massive amounts of money to contractors who then hired retired NSA officials who then lobbied Congress for even more money. It kept the entire ecosystem fed.
So you have this showdown. Binney saying, I have a working tool right now for pennies, and the leadership saying, we prefer the billion-dollar tool that doesn't exist yet.
Binney explicitly warned them. He told them that Trailblazer was trying to store the data before analyzing it, which would crush their servers. ThinThread analyzed it in the stream, but they shut him down.
And the data that shut down is haunting.
August 2001, 3 weeks before the attacks, the NSA leadership officially kills ThinThread. They chose the bureaucratic bloat over actual capability.
And we have to address the elephant in the room here. Binney claims that if ThinThread had been running, 9/11 could have been prevented.
He is absolutely adamant about this. And it's not just speculation. After the attacks, they actually ran the historical data through the ThinThread models. The signals were there. The hijackers weren't using complex encryption. They were using standard credit cards, phones, basic flight reservations. The graph would have lit up like a Christmas tree.
The connections between the terror cells were visible to the math.
Yes. But the agency had turned the math off.
That is a forensic conclusion that is incredibly hard to swallow. The idea that the data was literally in their hands, but they were deliberately using the wrong tools to look at it.
It gets worse. 9/11 happens. The towers fall. The country is absolutely terrified. The NSA has fundamentally failed in its primary mission to protect the country. You would think this would be the moment they go back to Binney and say, okay, we messed up. Turn on your machine.
But they didn't do that. They did something much darker.
They initiated a program called Stellar Wind, and this is the great betrayal of William Binney's life.
Explain, Stellar Wind.
The agency realized they actually needed his code. They needed the mass collection capability of ThinThread to handle the insane data load. So they took his engine. They took the code that scraped the internet.
But they stripped out the privacy protection.
Exactly. They removed the encryption module. They completely removed the warrant requirement. They took the shield he built, the thing specifically designed to filter threats while protecting innocent citizens, and they turned it into a net.
A total dragnet.
Suddenly, the NSA wasn't just looking for foreign terrorists. They were ingesting the domestic communications of the entire country. AT&T, Verizon, major internet backbones, they were just copying everything.
This must have been the breaking point for Binney.
It was. He sees his own invention, his literal life's work, being lobotomized and turned into a weapon against the Constitution he revered. He couldn't participate in it. On October 31st, 2001, he resigned. He walked away from a brilliant 30-year career.
But he didn't just leave quietly. He tried to warn the system from the inside.
He and his team, Kirk Wiebe, Ed Loomis, and a congressional staffer named Diane Rourke, they actually filed a formal complaint with the Department of Defense Inspector General in 2002.
So they played by the rules. They didn't leak to the press. They went to the official oversight body and said, hey, there is massive financial fraud with Trailblazer and massive unconstitutional spying happening with Stellar Wind.
And the system responded by protecting itself. The Inspector General's report was heavily classified and essentially buried. The investigation into Trailblazer was a complete sham, but the agency definitely didn't forget who raised the flag.
Which brings us to 2007. Because this is where the bureaucratic pathology we talked about turns into physical, state-sanctioned violence.
Right. It's been years since Binney left the agency. He's retired. He's suffering from severe diabetes. He's a double amputee.
Set the scene for us.
It is July 26, 2007. It's 9:00 in the morning. Binney is in the shower. He's literally washing his hair. And suddenly, the bathroom door flies open.
And he's staring at the barrel of a gun.
A dozen FBI agents in full tactical gear have raided his home. They hold a naked 64-year-old amputee at gunpoint, dripping wet. They separate him from his wife. They completely tear his house apart. They take his computers, his business records, everything.
What was the justification? They had to have a pretext.
The pretext was a leak to the New York Times. The famous article about warrantless wiretapping that eventually won the Pulitzer Prize. They claimed they were looking for the source of that leak.
But Binney wasn't the source.
No, he wasn't. The actual source was Thomas Drake and a few others, though the government conveniently lumped them all together. But the raid on Binney wasn't really about finding evidence. You don't need to point a gun at a naked man's head to find a USB drive.
It was a message.
It was pure intimidation. It was the system saying, this is what happens when you question us. They wanted to utterly destroy him. They revoked his security clearance, which immediately destroyed his post-retirement consulting business. They tried to bankrupt him with legal fees.
But it backfired.
Completely backfired. Before that raid, Binney was a quiet, retired technician who tried to use the proper channels. After the raid, he became a crusader. The sheer injustice of it radicalized him, not against America, but against the agency leadership. He realized that silence just wasn't an option anymore.
This brings us to the connection with Edward Snowden. Because I think people listening often conflate the two, or they see Snowden as the very start of this story. But Binney really provides the crucial architectural context for what Snowden later revealed.
That is the vital distinction. Snowden provided the what. He gave us the primary documents, the PowerPoint slides, the specific program names like Prism and Upstream. He proved the existence of the surveillance network. But Binney explains the how and the why. Binney explains that these massive programs are the mutated, bastardized descendants of ThinThread.
Binney shows us that the big-ass graph, which is what they actually call it internally, incredibly, wasn't necessary.
And that is the true philosophical stake here. We are constantly told by politicians and intelligence heads that we have to make a trade. Do you want to be safe from terrorists? Then you have to let us read your emails.
And Binney proves that is a lie.
A complete lie. We had the technology to do both. We had the complex math to filter for actual terrorists without unmasking the innocent public.
We had it in 2001. We just bought the other thing instead.
The surveillance state we have today, the one that tracks every financial transaction, every location ping from your phone, is not a result of necessity. It is a result of deep-seated corruption. It exists because it is highly profitable for the defense contractors and extremely convenient for the bureaucrats to have a collect-it-all mentality rather than a collect-what-matters mentality.
It's the difference between a surgical scalpel and a nuclear bomb.
And we chose the bomb. The legacy of William Binney is that he is the ghost in the machine. He is the living proof that the road not taken was actually completely viable. When you hear him speak today, there is this deep, resonant sadness to him, not just for his own brutal treatment, but for the Republic itself.
He believes the Constitution was effectively suspended after 9/11 and simply never reinstated.
And the scary part is, the incentives haven't changed at all. The Iron Triangle is stronger than ever, the budgets are bigger, the data collection is deeper.
And the protections are still gone. The graph is there right now. It maps your entire life. It knows who you talk to, where you sleep, who you bank with, and there is no algorithm encrypting your identity until a warrant is signed. It's just open.
It leaves you with a profound question. If the man who built the very eyes of the state tells you that the state has gone blind with power, do you believe him?
I think we have to. Binney's story strips away the comforting excuse of ignorance. We cannot say we didn't know there was a better, more constitutional way. We knew the code was written. The tragedy isn't that we failed to build a better system. It's that we built it, and then we destroyed it because it didn't make enough money for the right people.
That is a thought that should keep us all up at night. The question isn't whether they are watching you. We know they are. The question is whether you have the political will to force them to put the blinders back on.
It's the ultimate test of a functioning democracy. Can we hold our own protectors accountable? Binney tried, and he paid a terrible price for it. It's up to the rest of us to decide if his sacrifice was worth it. Thank you for listening to the Golden Gems podcast. We'll be back next time with another deep dive. Until then, keep exploring, keep listening, and keep celebrating the power of uncompromising voices.